Hallo Deutschlerner! In this video I'm going to explain how to use the Präteritum tense, or the preterite, the simple past tense in German, by using the story of Rapunzel to show you examples of how to use this. If you just want to see me read the story and show you with some interesting graphics and drawings, you can see that linked in the description. If you would like worksheets or extra materials to go with this video, go ahead and click that join button down below the video, or go to patreon.com/Mr. L. Antrim, just like these wonderful people did. Today we are going to talk about the Präteritum tense. This tense is known by many different names. Some of them include the preterite tense, the simple past tense, the written past tense, the narrative past, and the imperfect. All of these names all just refer to this tense, and this is the tense that is in the past. It's things that are already done and over with, but it's usually used when writing, therefore it's the written past or the narrative past. This tense also uses only one verb at a time, meaning that it's not a form of haben and a past participle like it is with the perfect, but that's why we call it the simple past tense sometimes, but I'm going to call it the Präteritum just because that's the word that I've chosen this week to use, but I do often call it the simple past or the written past whenever I'm teaching in classes. Regular and irregular verbs in this tense are conjugated differently from each other, so we have to pay attention to whether this verb is a regular verb or an irregular verb so we can decide which set of endings to use for it. For instance, the verb machen. In the present tense, we would say ich mache, du machst, sie es macht, wir machen, ihr macht, sie machen, sie machen. In this new tense, the Präteritum, we're going to add t's to all of our endings. But now that we have this t in here, we need to add an e for the do form and the ir form so that we make sure that they are pronounceable. So instead of just machtst, which is kind of difficult, we would say machtest. So the full conjugation of the verb machen in this Präteritum tense is ich machte, du machtest, sie es machte, wir machten, ihr machtet, sie machten, sie machten. As you can see, in this tense we have the ich and the sie es form being the same ending. This is going to be true for both regular and irregular verbs. If a verb is irregular in the perfect tense, it's a safe bet that it will also be irregular in this tense. There are no exceptions to that rule. Irregular verbs take a different set of endings. Specifically, they take the same endings that the normal verbs would take in the present tense, with the exception of the ich and sie es forms, which just don't get an ending now. Irregular verbs will have a stem change of some sort, and therefore we have here just some weird stem, and that's the form that we'll use for ich and sie es. The other endings will then come into play for the du, wir, ihr, and sie forms with the same endings that we had in the present tense, so st, en, and t. The full conjugation of gehen in this tense, for instance, would be ich ging, du gingst, sie, es ging, wir gingen, ihr gingt, sie gingen. I have a ton of other videos on this channel about this tense, so if you haven't checked out some of those videos, they are all linked in the description. There's obviously at least 12 or 13 of them on the list that you can see on the screen here, but there are several others that are not listed on here, so plenty of things to find out about this tense down in the description. What we are going to do today is we're going to take the knowledge that you have about this tense, and we're going to start using this for a worksheet that I created a long time ago for my video about Rapunzel. This worksheet has a bunch of blank spaces in it, and in parentheses there are verbs. Each one of these verbs needs to be conjugated in the Präteritum, and we need to use the correct ending on that and make sure that it fits in the sentence. So we're going to read the story of Rapunzel together, and we're also going to talk about what form of the verb we need, why we need that form, and how that helps us to understand the sentence. Also, los geht's. Also, insert word here, einmal dieser Typ und seine Frau. First of all, if you have the verb sein, we know that the stem of this verb is war. W-A-R. And most fairy tales start with Es war einmal. Einmal being just once, and in English we say once upon a time. So, normally this would be Also, es war einmal, blah blah blah. But this time we have dieser Typ und seine Frau, which is our subject of this sentence, so we actually need the they form here. Sie waren. Es waren einmal dieser Typ und seine Frau. There once was this man and his wife. Now we have the verb wollen, which is one of our modal auxiliaries, and we have sie, referring back to this dude and his wife. That's sie, as in they. So we need here the past tense, or the Präteritum tense, for wollen to go with they. So our form here that we need is sie wollten. Sie wollten seit jeher ein Kind haben. They wanted a child since forever, essentially. Vielleicht, in a form of haben that goes with this same sie. Again, this is the they form, referring to the guy and his wife. Sie haben. In the simple past, we say hatte, and then we use the sie form, which has an en at the end of it. So we would say, vielleicht hatten sie zu viel Geld. Maybe they had too much money. As in, if you have a child, then you have to spend a bunch of money on them, and so maybe this family just had too much money, and so they decided to throw it away on a child. Then we have the verb schlafen, which is still using that same form. Schlafen is also an irregular verb, and it changes to schlief as its stem. This time we're going to again add an extra en to the end of it to make it so that it's the they form. Und schliefen zu viel in der Nacht. And they slept too much at night. In other words, I don't know why anybody wants a child. Maybe they have too much money that they just need to throw some away, and maybe they slept too much at night, and so they decided they needed a way to interrupt their sleep. So, lots of sarcasm laced in there. Ich habe auch keine Ahnung warum. I also don't have any idea why. Aber, but, sie, again referring back to the they that we keep referring to, and we have again wollen. It's the same form that we used before. Sie wollten es trotzdem, but they wanted it nonetheless. So, I don't know why they wanted a child, but they wanted it. That's the point. Sie, again, same form. Sie wollten es. They wanted it. Das ist der Punkt. That is the point. Sie, in a form of können, aber keine Kinder haben. This time we again have the sie form, and the stem of können is konnte in this tense, and so we're going to change this to konnten for the sie form. Sie konnten aber keine Kinder haben. They couldn't have any children, however. Eines Tages, a form of sagen, die Frau ihrem Mann. So in this case we have die Frau as the subject of the sentence, and so we're going to use the sie s form of the verb for the verb sagen. Sagen is a regular verb, so we just add a te to the end of our stem, and we end up with sagte. Eines Tages sagte die Frau ihrem Mann. One day the woman said to her husband, dass sie auch gerne etwas Rapunzel hätte, that she would like to have some Rapunzel, or this plant that you can eat. It's kind of like a lettuce type plant. Die Nachbarn von dem Ehepaar, insert word here, einem Garten. This time the subject is die Nachbarn, which is the neighbor, so the neighbor of the couple. And we use here the RCS form. As we mentioned before, haben's stem is hatte, which is the same form we use here for the RCS form. Die Nachbarn von dem Ehepaar hatte einen Garten. The neighbor of the couple had a garden. In dem Garten, insert form of sein here, Rapunzel. This time we have Rapunzel as our subject, which is a singular noun, and so we say war. War is the stem of the verb sein in the Präteritum tense, and since it's the RCS form, we don't have to change anything about it, we just leave war as war. Es, in a form of geben, wahrscheinlich auch irgendwo in der Stadt ein Lebensmittelgeschäft. So, es is our subject here, there, or it was, or in this case, there was, and we're going to use geben here. The stem of the verb geben is gab in this tense, so we use here in the RCS form, gab. Es gab wahrscheinlich auch irgendwo in der Stadt ein Lebensmittelgeschäft, wo man Rapunzel kaufen konnte. So there was probably a grocery store in the city where you could also buy Rapunzel. Aber der Mann, form of springen, über den Zaun und fing an, die Rapunzel zu stehlen. So the man jumped over the fence and started to steal the Rapunzel. Springen is also an irregular verb, so its stem changes to sprang, and since it's der Mann as our subject, we don't need to add any ending to it, we just leave it as sprang. Next up we have as our subject, and again haben, which we've said several times, is hatte as our stem, and since it's the RZS form, we don't have to add anything extra to that, it's just hatte. Hatte offensichtlich keine moralische Richtschnur. He obviously didn't have any moral compass. Die Nachbarn, insert form of kommen here, zu dem Mann und form of sagen in this blank. Die Nachbarn is our subject of this sentence, so we have the ZS form of both kommen and sagen. Kommen is an irregular verb which changes to kam, K-A-M, as its stem. Again, since we're using the RZS form, we don't need to have anything extra to that, it's just kam. Sagen is a regular verb, which means that it just gets a TE ending at the end of the stem, and since again this is the RZS form, it's only that TE that we add on there. So the neighbor came up to the man and said, Hey du, was tust du hier? Hey you, what are you doing here? Der Mann, and the verb erwidern. Erwidern is to reply and is a regular verb, so this doesn't change anything. We just drop the N at the end of it instead of EN, as there isn't an E. So we just add then a TE to the end of our stem, erwider, and we end up with erwiderte. Der Mann erwiderte. Nichts, ich stehle nur ein bisschen Rapunzel. Nothing, I'm just stealing some Rapunzel. Oh, schön. Oh, great, says the neighbor. In this case, again, we have said, same form, same person that's saying it, so we again have sagte die Nachbarin, said the neighbor. Ich werde das erlauben, wenn du mir dein erstes Kind gibst. I will allow this if you give me your first child. Der Mann, answer, in the past tense. Answer is another regular verb, so we just add a TE to the end of our stem. But since we have a T already there at the end of our stem, we added an extra E, so we end up with what I believe is the weirdest regular verb in German for the past tense, and we end up with antwortete. It sounds kind of like you're stuttering at the end of the word, but at least it's still better than the ear form where it's antwortetet. Too many E's and T's together for me. Anyway, der Mann antwortete, ja, okay, warum nicht? So the man answered, yeah, okay, why not? Ich kann überhaupt keine Kinder haben und ich will die Rapunzel haben. I can't have kids anyway, and I want to have Rapunzel. So what's he got to lose? Der Mann, form of gehen, nach Hause, wie ein Mann, der im Lotto gewonnen hat. Gehen is an irregular verb. It changes to ging as its simple past or Präteritum form. And so gehen, in this case, is going to be ging. And since it's the RZS form again, der Mann as our subject, we again don't need an ending at all. Der Mann ging dann nach Hause, wie ein Mann, der im Lotto gewonnen hat. So the man went home as if he were a man that just won the lotto. Ich glaube, in a form of the verb hüpfen, which is to hop, nach Hause. Hüpfen, in the past tense, is hüpfte. So we add a TE to the end of our stem, which means that again, this is a regular verb. This is the RZS form, so hüpfte. I believe that he hopped home. In a form of sein this time, so froh. Sein in the simple past, or the Präteritum, is war. So we have war so froh. He was so happy. Die Frau von dem Mann, word with fressen in the simple past, die Rapunzel so wie ein schwarzes Loch, das einen Planeten frisst. So in this sentence, we have die Frau as the subject. The verb fressen is generally supposed to be used for animals, but you can use it to illustrate that this is kind of an animalistic way of eating the Rapunzel. So this sentence says the woman of the man, or the man's wife, essentially, ate the Rapunzel like a black hole that is eating a planet. At any rate, the word fressen follows the same pattern as essen does, and that changes to Essen changes to aß. Fressen changes to fraß. And again, we have here the er-sie-es form, so again, no ending, just fraß. After that, we have another sentence with sie, and this time with the verb essen. As I just said, the stem of that is aß. So we have, sie aß sie so schnell. She ate it so quickly, dass ein Stück Rapunzel in ihrem Bauch stecken, and a simple past of bleiben. Bleiben switches the I and the E around for the stem, so we end up with blieb as our irregular stem. And again, we don't need an ending because this is just one piece that got stuck. And so then we have this Stück as our subject, the er-sie-es form again. So, dass ein Stück Rapunzel in ihrem Bauch stecken blieb. So she ate it so quickly that a piece of the Rapunzel stuck in her belly. Falls du es nicht schon, form of wissen. Du in this sentence is our subject, so we have to have wissen in that form. Wissen as its simple past is an irregular verb, so we have to use here an st at the end, but also the stem change in the middle. So we have wusste as our normal stem, and an st at the end of that, we end up with wusstest. Falls du es nicht schon wusstest, if you didn't already know it, so bekommt man Kinder. This is how you get children. Sie kommen nicht vom Storch, they don't come from a stork. Sie kommen nicht von Gott, they don't come from God. Sie fallen nicht aus dem Himmel, they don't fall from the sky or the heavens. Sie wachsen im Bauch einer Frau, die etwas Falsches gegessen hat. They grow in the belly of a woman who has eaten something incorrectly. 9 Monaten später, bekommen in the simple past, das Ehepaar ein kleines Mädchen als Tochter. Ehepaar, while it does represent more than one person, Paar is a singular noun, so we use the singular form of bekommen. Bekommen is an irregular verb, so we use here the irregular stem, bekam, as our er-sie-es form of the verb. Einen Tag später, insert word for kommen, die Nachbarn zu ihrem Haus. A day later, the neighbor came to their house. Kommen is an irregular verb, but it follows the same pattern as bekommen did up there at the top, so we end up with kam. Einen Tag später kam die Nachbarn zu ihrem Haus. A day later, the neighbor came to their house. Sie, and a form of sagen that goes with sie, meaning the er-sie-es form, which we've already used a few times in this. Sie sagte, she said, Hallo, ich habe das nicht vorher gesagt, aber ich bin nicht nur eure Nachbarin, sondern auch eine Hexe. Hello, I didn't say this before, but I'm not just your neighbor, but also a witch. Gebt mir euer Kind, oder ich werde euch etwas Schlechtes tun. Give me your child, or I will do something bad to you. Die neuen Eltern, and a form of sagen that goes with this Eltern. This is plural this time, so we have an en at the end, but the base form is the same. Sagten, die neuen Eltern sagten, the new parents said, warum nicht? Why not? Wir and the past tense of wünschen. Wünschen is another regular verb, so again we don't have to worry about having any weird stem. We just drop the en and add our te ending. This time we also have wir as our subject, so we also add an extra n to the end to fit that. So, wir wünschten uns nichts anderes in der Welt, außer ein Kind zu haben. We have never wished for anything for ourselves except for to have a child. Aber da wir dieses Kind jetzt haben, werden wir es dir gerne geben. But since we already have this child here, we will gladly give it to you. Fair ist fair. Fair is fair. Die Hexe, and the verb versprechen in the simple past, sprechen all by itself is irregular and changes to sprach. Versprechen does the same thing, so we end up with versprach. Die Hexe versprach, dass sie das Kind wie eine Mutter lieben würde. So the witch promised that she would take care of the child, or that she would love the child as a mother would. Warum sollte man einer Hexe nicht glauben? Why wouldn't one believe a witch? Sie sind normalerweise ganz ehrliche Frauen. They're usually such honest and trustworthy women. Wie eine Mutter, a form of nehmen, die Hexe das Kind. Nehmen goes with die Hexe this time, again the ERCS form. Nehmen is also an irregular verb and changes to nahm in this tense. So nahm die Hexe das Kind. So like a mother, the witch grabbed the child or took the child. Nennen in the simple past is nannte. It's also an irregular verb, but it does have te endings. Some people consider this to be a mixed verb. I just hate that term because it indicates to students that there's some sort of an in-between between regular and irregular, when in reality it's got a stem change which makes it irregular. The fact that it ends in te is irrelevant because we can just think of that as our stem and then add our endings appropriately and you'll end up with the correct conjugation. Und, and the verb werfen this time, which is to throw, and we have warf as our stem change there. Warf es in einem Turm ohne Treppe. Like a mother, the witch took the child, named it Rapunzel, and threw it into a tower without stairs. Ich weiß nicht warum oder wie man den Turm, and a form of the verb bauen. Bauen is a regular verb, so we don't have to do anything fancy, just drop the en and add your te endings. Since man is our subject, that's a singular noun, or it's a singular pronoun of sorts, and so we use here baute as our ending. So I don't know why or how they built this. Vielleicht, and the verb erteilen. Die Hexe is our subject here, so erteilte. This is a regular verb, so we just have those te endings. And again, the RZS form just has only that te ending. So vielleicht erteilte die Hexe den Auftrag für den Turm. Maybe the witch sent in the order for the tower, als sie hören in the simple past. Hören is a regular verb again, so we just have a te ending, and our subject is still the witch. So we have here hörte, als sie hörte, when she heard, dass sie das Kind bekommen würde, that she would receive the child. So maybe she set out a contract once she knew that she was going to get this child. Vielleicht, and a form of geben, but this time with s as our subject. Again, we talked about geben earlier. It's an irregular verb, and it changes to gab. So vielleicht gab es seit Ewigkeiten diesen Turm. Maybe this tower was always there. Und sie, in the form of kaufen. Kaufen is a regular verb, so we have those te endings, and sie is referring back to die Hexe. So again, we have just a te at the end, nothing else beyond that. Und sie kaufte ihn einfach, and she simply purchased it, since it was there forever. Ich weiß auch nicht, warum es keine Treppe, and a form of geben. This is the same form of geben that we just used, because es is still our subject. So, ich weiß auch nicht, warum es keine Treppe gab. I also don't know why there were no stairs. Warum könnte die Hexe nicht einfach die Tür vor der Treppe zusperren? Why couldn't the witch simply lock the door to the stairs? Egal. Rapunzel, and a form of müssen for the simple past, in dem Turm bleiben. Müssen is one of those modal auxiliaries, so that's why we still have bleiben at the end of the sentence in an infinitive. But müssen is just going to drop the umlaut and then take the te endings that we had before. Musste. Rapunzel musste in dem Turm bleiben. So it doesn't matter why there's no stairs or why there's no door or any of that stuff. Rapunzel had to stay in the tower. Rapunzel Essen und andere Sachen zu bringen, in order to bring Rapunzel food and other things. Sagen, to go with the Hexe, which we've used several times now. Sagte die Hexe, the witch said, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, lass dein Haar herunter. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Rapunzel, and a form of lassen. Lassen is another irregular verb, and it changes to ließ. While the original infinitive had two s's, ließ is going to use an s set because the ie combination there creates what we call a diphthong, and if you have one of those, then we go from an ss to s set. So ließ as this form here. Rapunzel ließ dann das Haar herunter. Rapunzel let down her hair then. Die Hexe, and a form of klettern. Klettern is a regular verb, so we just drop the n at the end since we don't have an en, and we add our te ending that still goes with our Hexe. Die Hexe kletterte. The witch climbed up the hair. Kletterte das Haar hinauf. Und a form of geben, it's the same form we've used several times on this page, gab dem Kind was es, and a form of brauchen, Es is referring back to dem Kind, or in this case das Kind for the nominative, and brauchen is then going to use the RZS form. Brauchen is another regular verb, so we just have a TE ending, and es is referring back to das Kind, which is the child, and so this is going to be the RZS form again, so we have just the TE ending, brauchte. Rapunzel ließ dann das Haar herunter, die Hexe kletterte das Haar hinauf und gab dem Kind, was es brauchte. So Rapunzel let down her hair, the witch climbed up the hair and gave the child what it needed. Ich weiß nicht, wie sie es anstellen in the simple past, ohne das Haar aus ihrem Schädel herauszureißen. So in this case we have anstellen, which is another regular verb, so we just have anstellen with the TE ending, which would be anstellten. This case, sie is referring to both Rapunzel and the witch, and so that's anstellten. I don't know how they accomplish this without tearing the hair out of her skull. Basically is that sentence. In manchen Versionen von diesem Märchen wickelt Rapunzel ihr Haar einen Haken. In some versions of this fairy tale, Rapunzel wrapped her hair around a hook. Vielleicht wäre es dann möglich. Maybe it was possible then. Aber was passiert, wenn der Haken die Hexe nicht tragen könnte oder sich locker wackelt? But what happens if the hook can't hold the weight of the witch, or it just wiggles itself loose? Bewerkstelligen is the next verb. This is also a regular verb, and so again, even if you don't recognize this verb, just drop the en at the end and add a te ending. In this case, we have sie again as our subject, and this subject here is going to have that same en ending. Wie bewerkstelligten sie es? How did they accomplish it? Als das Haar nicht so lang sein in the simple past, which we mentioned earlier is war, and in this case we're talking about the hair that was, so that's das Haar war. So how did they accomplish this when the hair wasn't so long? Was hat die Hexe dann gemacht? What did the witch do then? And then we have werden, which is then changed into the simple past tense with wurde. Rapunzel wurde wahrscheinlich nicht mit 20 Meter langen Haaren geboren. So Rapunzel was probably not born with 20-meter long hair. Es dauert seine Zeit, bis man so lange Haare hat. It takes a little while before someone has hair that long. Ich habe keine Ahnung. I don't know. Das ist hier nicht der Punkt. That's not the point here. Also, die Hexe, and a form of klettern that we used earlier, kletterte, das Haar hinauf. So the witch climbed up the hair. Das wissen wir. We know that much. Einmal, in a form of kommen to go with dieser Kerl, und sah die Hexe. So one time this dude showed up and he saw the witch. Kommen, as we mentioned earlier, is kam in the simple past, and dieser Kerl is again going to use that RZS form, which means again we don't need an ending. Einmal kam dieser Kerl und sah die Hexe. So one time this dude came up and he saw the witch. In a form of sagen, which we've used a ton of times now, sagte, sagte zu sich selbst, ich kann das auch. He said to himself, I can do that too. Alsdann, in a form of rufen to go with rief would be the stem of this, which is R-I-E-F, rief. And then again, we don't have an ending past that because this is an irregular verb and it's the RZS form. So it's just rief zu Rapunzel. So with this knowledge, he called to Rapunzel, hey, lass dein Haar herunter. Hey, let down your hair. Rapunzel, in a form of sagen again, same form that we've been using, sagte, wer bist denn du? Who are you? Der Mann, and again with the verb sagen, still same form, sagte, der Mann sagte, the man said, ich bin ein Prinz. I'm a prince. Dann komm rein. Then come on in. Rapunzel, in the form of lassen we used earlier, which is ließ, again with that S set there, L-I-E-S set, ließ ihr Haar herunter. Rapunzel let down her hair. Der Prinz, now using the same version of the verb that the witch did, kletterte das Haar hinauf. The prince climbed up the hair. Als der Prinz, wissen wir wirklich, dass dieser Typ ein Prinz? And a form of sein. This form of sein here is the same one we've been using. It's the RZS form, and the stem is war, which is also the same form that we use for RZS. So, als der Prinz, wissen wir wirklich, dass dieser Typ ein Prinz war? So the prince, Do we really know that this dude was a prince? In the same form of sagen we've been using, sagte. He said, Ich bin ein Prinz. I am a prince. Und Rapunzel, in a form of glauben. Glauben is a regular verb, so we again use those te endings, and Rapunzel is our subject, so we just have only the te, glaubte. Rapunzel glaubte ihm, and Rapunzel believed him. Wie dumm ist dieses Mädchen? How dumb is this girl? Egal. Rapunzel, and a form of sein that we've talked about before, war schön. It doesn't matter, Rapunzel was beautiful, Rapunzel war schön. Der Prinz, and a form of sein, same one, war hübsch. The prince was handsome. Das ist ein Märchen. This is a fairy tale. And a form of haben. We mentioned earlier that haben is hatte as the stem, but this sie here is referring to both the prince and Rapunzel, so we use here hatten. Sie hatten sich beide ineinander verliebt, but they fell in love with each other. Because two pretty people in a story like this, you can't have them not fall in love. Ich weiß, was ihr denkt. I know what you're thinking. Sie nimmt gleich den ersten Mann, den sie je traf. She is taking the first man that she ever met. Ja, yes. Das habe ich auch gedacht. I thought that too. Aber es, and again here, form of sein, same form that we've been using, war, because again it's still the sie form. Es war Liebe auf den ersten Blick oder sowas. It was love at first sight or something like that. Einmal, and again the form of klettern that goes with our prince here. Einmal kletterte der Prinz das Haar hinauf. One time the prince climbed up the hair. Und als ungefähr 100 Meter hoch, and a form of sein that goes again with the subject or he, the prince, war. When he was about 100 meters up in the air, and we look at the word erblicken, erblicken is another regular verb, this time again using the erstes form, so again just has the te ending. Erblickte der Prinz die Hexe. So he was about 100 meters in the air, and he saw the witch. Sie, and a form of sagen that we've been using, sagte. Sie sagte, she said, Haha, jetzt wirst du für dein Schleichen bezahlen. Now you will pay for your sneaking. Dann, and a form of schneiden. Schneiden is another irregular verb. It changes from schneiden to schnitt. S-C-H-N-I-T-T. Dann schnitt sie das Haar von Rapunzel. Then she cut the hair from Rapunzel. And die Hexe, beobachten is our verb here. This is another regular verb, which means that we just have our te endings, and nothing fancy here because it's die Hexe as our subject, so just the te will do. Die Hexe beobachtete am vorherigen Tag, wie der Prinz, and a form of hinaufklettern, this time same form as before, except now it's got hinauf in front of it. Wie der Prinz hinaufkletterte. The witch watched yesterday, or the day before, as the prince climbed up. Sie, and a form of denken. Denken in this case is going to change to dachte as its simple past form, or Präteritum form. That has a stem change, and again the te endings are part of that stem. Sie dachte, she thought. And a form of wollen that goes with wollte. Wollte Rapunzel aus dem Turm rausholen. She thought that he wanted to take Rapunzel out of the tower. Der Prinz, and a form of the verb fallen. Fallen is an irregular verb, and its stem changes to fiel. Since we're again talking about the prince, we don't have to add an ending, it's just fiel. Der Prinz fiel zu Boden. The prince fell to the ground. Als and again form of fallen, the same one we just used, als fiel, when he fell, and the form of denken, which we just used a couple of lines ago, dachte so as he was falling, he thought to himself, vielleicht hätte ich das letzte Mal, als ich im Turm, and the same form that we've been using for sein, this time as the ich form, so ich war, it's the same as the erstes form though, als ich im Turm war, eine Leiter bauen sollen. So, vielleicht hätte ich das letzte Mal, als ich im Turm war, eine Leiter bauen sollen. Maybe the last time I was in the tower, I should have built a ladder. Oder ich könnte auch Rapunzel früher mit nach Hause bringen. Or I could have just taken Rapunzel back with me earlier. Ich könnte ihr Haar schneiden und dann das Haar mit dem Bett festbinden. I could have just cut off her hair and then tied it to the side of the bed. Dann könnten wir beide wegrennen. then we could both run away. Warum habe ich nicht früher daran gedacht? Why didn't I think of this sooner? Aue! It's ow, but German. Als endlich zu Boden, and again the same form that we had before for fallen, fiel, when he finally fell to the ground. And the verb landen, landen is a regular verb, which means it just has those te endings. And we have here the d at the end of our stem, so we had to add an extra e for our conjugated form. Landete. Landete in einem Dornenbusch. When he fell to the ground finally, he landed in a thorn bush. Der Dornenbusch, and the verb zerreißen. Zerreißen uses the stem change zerriss as its form, and this is the RZS form again because even though it's a Dornenbusch, it's still a singular noun, so zerriss. No ending on that. Der Dornenbusch zerriss die Haut des Prinzen und in a form of stechen. Stechen is an irregular verb and changes to stach in the simple past. There's no ending here again because we're still using the RZS form for the Dornenbusch. Und stach seine Augen aus. Der Dornenbusch zerriss die Haut des Prinzen und stach seine Augen aus. The thorn bush tore his skin and poked out his eyes. Der Prinz, and a form of schreien. Schreien is going to switch the I and the E around, and so we end up with schrie. Der Prinz schrie. The prince screamed. Wie in einem Horrorfilm mit einem riesengroßen Ungeheuer, das kleine Kinder und Frauen ohne Ketchup, and the verb fressen again. This is the same form we used for fressen earlier. We used fraß. So he screamed, wie in einem Horrorfilm mit einem riesengroßen Ungeheuer, das kleine Kinder und Frauen ohne Ketchup fraß. So he screamed like in a horror film with a giant monster that is eating small children and women without ketchup. Mit Ketchup wäre es dann okay, aber ohne Ketchup, igitt, was für ein Horror. With ketchup, it would be okay, but without ketchup, that's disgusting. What a horror. Next up, we have the verb laufen. Laufen is another irregular verb. This one changes from laufen to lief. L-I-E-F. Vor Angst lief der Prinz schreiend weg. He ran out of fear away from there. And then we have the verb wandern. Wandern is a regular verb again, so we just have those te endings. Don't forget that since this only has an n and not an en, we just lose the n, so it becomes wanderte. Wanderte 10 Jahre in der Wüste. He wandered in the desert for 10 years. In a form of Essen that goes with him. Aß. Aß nur Sand und Eidechsen. He only ate sand and lizards. In a form of Essen again. Aß die Eidechsen absichtlich, aber den Sand versehentlich. So he ate the lizards on purpose, but the sand on accident. Man, in a form of können. Long time ago, earlier in this whole thing, we were talking about the verb können, and we used konnte. Man konnte eine Eidechse im Sand ohne Feuer kochen, weil es so heiß in der Wüste. In a form of sein, the same one that we've been using. S is our subject, so we still use war. Man konnte eine Eidechse im Sand ohne Feuer kochen, weil es so heiß in der Wüste war. So you could cook a lizard in sand without a fire because it was so hot. Eines Tages, in the form of hören, I believe we had this verb earlier, it is hörte, der Mann eine Frau singen. Eines Tages hörte der Mann eine Frau singen. One day, the man heard a woman singing. In the form of denken that we used earlier, dachte. Dachte, he thought. Ich kenne diese Stimme. I know this voice. And then we have rufen. Rufen changes to rief, which we used earlier when he was calling for her to let down her hair. Rief. Dann rief hey, ich bin hier. Then he called out, hey, I'm here. Natürlich, and a form of the verb gehören. Gehören follows the same forms as hören does, because it's basically the same verb with a ge in front, and so we still have just the te endings. Die Stimme is our subject, which is still the RZS form, so no ending, just te. Natürlich gehörte diese Stimme Rapunzel. Of course this voice belonged to Rapunzel. Sie, in a form of kommen, which we already used earlier in this thing too, kam. Sie kam zu dem Prinz. She came to the prince. Als sie sein Gesicht, and a form of sehen. Sehen changes to sah in the simple past, S-A-H. And again, our subject is Rapunzel, so we don't have an ending. It's just sah for the RZS form. And then the verb weinen is regular, and this regular form is going to use the te endings because, again, Rapunzel is our subject. So, weinte. Als sie sein Gesicht sah, weinte sie. When she saw his face, she cried. Ich glaube, and a form of the verb altern. Altern is to age, so it's also a regular verb. So we lose the n at the end and we add our te endings to go with Ich glaube, alterte nicht gut. I believe that he didn't age well. Und deshalb, and the form of weinen we used earlier, weinte sie. So the reason she cried, of course, is because he didn't age well and he got ugly. Werden is in the next one, which is the one we used earlier, wurde. Wurde hässlich in seinem Alter. So he got ugly in his old age. Es könnte auch sein, dass sie glücklich war, ihn wiederzusehen. It could also be, of course, that she was happy to see him again. Aber egal warum sie weinte, same form we used earlier, but regardless of why she was crying, als die Tränen in den Augen des Mannes, and a form of landen, this time the plural form because our subject is Tränen, which are tears, als die Tränen in den Augen des Mannes landeten, and we have again this werden, this time with a plural thing because we have seine Augen as our subject, so we have wurden with an N at the end. Als die Tränen in den Augen des Mannes landeten, wurden seine Augen geheilt. When the tears of the woman landed in the eyes of the man, they were healed again. Der Mann, and a form of öffnen that we need in this blank to go with der Mann. Öffnen is a regular verb, so again just a te ending for the RZS form. Öffnete. Don't forget, because we have two F's and an N at the end of our stem here for öffnen, we can't really say that without having an extra syllable, so we have that extra E in there for pronunciation purposes. So, öffnete instead of öffnete. Der Mann öffnete seine Augen. The man opened his eyes. And sehen, in the simple past, we already used, which is sah. Und sah Rapunzel vor sich stehen. And saw Rapunzel standing in front of him. Sie, in a form of haben, which we've used a few times. Hatte, in this case, because it's the RZS form again. Sie hatte zwei kleine Kinder mit dabei. She had two small children with her. Der Mann, in a form of sagen that we've used a ton of times in this, sagte. The man said, Wer sind sie? Who are they? Rapunzel, in the same form of sagen, sagte. Rapunzel said, Das ist dein Sohn und deine Tochter. This is your son and your daughter. Ach du meine Güte, sagte der Mann. Oh my goodness, the man said. That is the end of our fairy tale of Rapunzel. I hope that you not only enjoyed the story, but you also learned a little bit about the grammar behind das Präteritum, and hopefully you can use this on your own. What I would like you to do is leave a comment down below if you like this kind of thing, and let me know what story I should do next, and what grammar topic I should tie it into. Das ist alles für heute. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!